interesting question, because I think in the community that we find ourselves in, people aren't really using AI to its full advantage. So if I look at it from two different perspectives, we're looking at it from an industry perspective and we're looking at it from an academic perspective. And although there are AI technologies out there, there are concepts that people are using like ChatGPT that's come about, the different versions of GPT, DALL-E, those kinds of things. Students are becoming more familiar with the technologies. Our clients are becoming more familiar with the technologies. They're starting to upskill themselves. So it means the people who are servicing them need to become better at using those technologies as well. So we've got to grow our skills just as rapidly as those technologies are coming out, because they're actually becoming a lot easier to use. When we were, let's say, 3 years back and you had to create your own sentiment analysis model, or you had to create your own model that would be able to detect pictures or be able to understand what you're trying to ask it, it became a little bit easier to stay ahead of the curve because more people would need to upskill on the surrounding technologies to be able to use it. But now that it's as easy as going to a browser or going onto an app and asking a question, everything is there, it's a lot easier to interface with these kinds of technologies. It's easier for images to be generated. And turning that into something that is useful into our processes and still being able to manage what is happening in the automation space becomes exciting but also scary, because it takes away a lot from what we were trying to kind of stay in touch with in terms of our growth. So I think it's going to rapidly upskill a lot of the focuses that we're busy with. It's going to change the way that we think about processes. It's going to change the way that we think about scaling. And I think it's going to put us on par with some of the citizen development initiatives that are currently running, because a lot of the things we now all have access to at the same time. If I think about how automation in education has come to be, and how processes run in our education systems in the different levels of education that you might get, I think some of the really important aspects or processes that we think about is how we assess our students. Having just come out of a pandemic, the way that people educate students, the way that people interact with students, it's all changed. And I think the way that material was generated, the way that material was given through to students, it changed over the last few years, from the pandemic, before the pandemic, and now post-pandemic as well. And I think one of the use cases where I've seen a lot of value being generated is actually through assessment automation, being able to create assessments automatically, being able to mark them automatically, being able to grade them. And I can say this from a South African context, a lot of our universities don't necessarily leverage all the skills from industry that they possibly could. When they do leverage skills from the industry, what tends to happen is people who are working in industry also give some of their part-time time over to the universities. So when you're working a full-time job and you're helping out a university, it makes it really difficult sometimes to manage your time. And one of the most stressing things from a university perspective is the administration that goes with it. So one of the use cases that I found massively helpful was a use case where I was able to use things like ChatGPT, being able to use different AI components and different AI models that we built ourselves and also change up to actually create assessments and then actually assess those assessments automatically as well. And something that was really important was actually having that validation brought back into the process to make sure that the results and the feedback that we were giving back to the students were very unique. It was very deliberate, and it actually helped them improve on their learning journey as well. So I think there's multiple aspects to it, multiple different ways that we can look at how AI can actually improve the lives of our students and also our lecturers. It's a really good question to ask, because if I think about this once again from a consulting perspective, where you're working with multiple different clients, you're working with multiple different industries, the first thing that you have to always consider is the governance and the security. Is the data that you are being trusted with secure with the platforms that you are using? Things like ChatGPT are amazing. The technology that is living behind it is absolutely phenomenal. But one of the biggest concerns that we get from our clients is, what is happening to my data? Can I feed my data safely into ChatGPT? Or is it going to be reused with other intent for other users who are using ChatGPT? And it's led to a number of very interesting conversations, and it's actually had to change the way that we put solutions together, because if you're working with sensitive data like contracts, you can't always pass that information off to a AI technology that is going to be open and enabled for everybody to use. So if you're adding data into the public domain and somebody else is using it, it could be for malicious intent, and it goes against a lot of confidentiality and sensitivity levels in an organization. So those kinds of things are essentially the foundation of what is becoming our approach to actually designing our solutions, architecting our solutions, and entrusting our clients to actually trust us with what we're putting forward. So I think, back to your question, governance and security has become the foundational layer of the way that we approach problem solving, specifically because you can so easily fall into a trap where very sensitive data has now been pretty much breached or given out into the public domain, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place, and people are trusting us with that data. And I think that's what makes tools like UiPath really awesome, because it still gives you the flexibility and the ease of use to be able to create your own models, create your own solutions, your own processes that encapsulate the same level of capability that you don't need to go to other platforms or solutions for. Traditionally, AI has been very difficult to sell because if people don't see it, they don't understand it. RPA has been quite, I don't want to say easy to sell, but it's made sense to people, because if a person is executing a process and they're watching a computer execute the process the same way that they would, they understand more or less, what is happening. When you have a situation where you're putting data in and you don't understand what's happening in the background, but suddenly you have an answer, that mess, that spaghetti that is the middle, really makes it difficult to sell. So having ChatGPT in our arms and in our embrace, where people can actually validate what is being brought out as an output, means that people don't need to understand the mess that is happening on the inside. And I think that's why ChatGPT has become synonymous with AI. It's the way that people make sense of the way that it works. But with that being said, we have really great AI models that do image processing. Something like Midjourney, which is available on Discord, is really good at being able to take in what you're trying to say and what you want to be able to visualize, and actually giving you something that visualizes the words that you put in. But I think other technologies, that are already embedded into the UiPath platform, things like being able to classify the documents that you're looking at, being able to make sense of the data that you have, those kinds of algorithms have been around for a very long time. And I think people have spent a lot of time trying to research and innovate and improve those models. And I think if it weren't for those kinds of models, ChatGPT wouldn't be where it is today. GPT-4, those kinds of technologies that underlie what ChatGPT means, wouldn't really, be as sophisticated as it is today. So I think being able to go back to the roots of all the different different types of AI models that you get and the different problems that we're trying to solve, I think if people keep focusing on that, to be able to give us more products like ChatGPT that people can understand AI with or about, I think that's what we need to get to, being able to make sense of whatever that spaghetti is. So I think there's two perspectives from it, or to it. The one is that the way that the UiPath platform has been founded, or the way that it's been formed, makes it really easy for people to put data in and get data out. So document understanding is a really great example. Being able to take documents in, make sense of what is happening, give you outputs, and then give you the platform like Validation Station to actually give the user the power over making sure the data that is coming out is correct. Those are really important aspects to have, but it means that the person doesn't need to understand, the user doesn't need to understand what's happening in the middle to actually make sense of what's happening to their data. And I think that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about using the UiPath platform with all the different products that are encapsulated into it, because you don't need to understand the deep down synthetics of what make up the platform to be able to use it. And I think that's something that if the UiPath team keep that in mind, they'll be very successful in that regard, because we can then start taking more of the different models that we know exist and putting them into platforms and products that people can understand and people can use without necessarily having to go redevelop everything from scratch. I think something that would be very important, once again to the points of governance and security, is making sure that there is very clear visibility that the data that is going into the model isn't being stored anywhere that would breach our clients' security trust or their policies that they have in place, because I think that would be one of the impediments.